Did our planet simply appear after a massive Big Bang, or are we the result of intelligent design?
As human beings, we've always been fascinated with the unknown, from space exploration to extraterrestrial life forms, religion, the occult, unknown historical facts to our very own planet and our origins as a species. Where did we come from? Who are we? What has been hidden from us?
On Revelationz, we attempt to uncover and investigate some of the universe's biggest mysteries, as well as provide previously unknown details about some of the planet's most influential pop cultural icons and scientists. We'll even attempt to delve into the secret societies that possibly control everything from our finances, world governments, to some of the technological advancements we've made over the last century.
This is Revelationz. The truth will be revealed. You must know. Yo, what's up, man? It's your boy, Gorilla Black, Norm Steele. Y'all definitely done tuned in, man, to the Revelation podcast, man. And today we have an exciting topic to really talk about. And for a lot of you, it's definitely going to make you a little bit uncomfortable. But nonetheless, I want all of the seekers of truth. I want people to, definitely hit the subscribe button. I want you to definitely leave your comments. We definitely want you guys to impart with us a lot of the knowledge and on this subject matter, some of the things that you guys were able to discover. And I mean, it's an interesting topic. And I think that, during the research of this, me and Steele, we definitely was able to uncover some profound things and delve into this. And, I thought that this would be a perfect thing for us to talk about today here on Revelationz. And so definitely, man, we finna get into it, man. We're going to talk about today the Anunnaki. And, doing my research, it was scary, some of the stuff that I discovered and some of the stuff that Steele brought to me. And he was just breaking me down on so many different levels. And we spoke about this, and I've been excited all week, man. So definitely, let's get into it, man. Steele, let's break this thing down.
And this is my disclaimer for the show. These aren't the views necessarily of me and Gorilla Black, but it's a subject that's interesting.
It definitely is.
And it has left many a scientist perplexed.
Yes, it has.
Because the Anunnaki, who were they as a people? I want you to break down for them on who the Anunnaki were.
The Anunnaki were spoke about in the Sumerian text, the Babylonian text, and also the Assyrian text. The Anunnaki were these beings that came from, like Steele just talked about, the planet Niburu. And Niburu, scientists have found that every 3,500 years, there's a red star or a dwarf star that comes into our galaxy every 3,500 years. And this planet is 6,500 times the size of Earth and 6 times the size of Jupiter with 11 moons. This is Niburu, and in which where the Sumerians said that the Anunnaki came from. When they came here, there was a war there on their planet, whether it was nuclear or they had depleted their resources.
Possibly nuclear, because they were versed with nuclear weaponry.
Yes.
As we get into later on in the episode, we'll talk about that. They've used those weapons on the planet.
Absolutely. And they came here. After there was a war, there was one Anunnaki by the name of Anu. And he was the king of the Anunnaki, and he fled and found refuge here on the planet Earth. And when he got here, he discovered that there was gold here on the planet. And this is the surprising thing that, when you look at all of the hominids and all of the people that were here, Neanderthal and all of these earlier life forms of first beginning man, we had this jump and advancement in understanding in time, in mathematics, in written form, in writing, in society. And it all began in Sumeria, one of the first ancient civilizations that had written form text. They had language. They were able to understand the concept of 360, the degrees in a circle, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. They had all of these advancements that were around them. These people pretty much had these powerful city states developed, and they were astronomy and mathematics, and they understood medicine, and they were developed, and they understood how to calculate things. They had the use of brick and asphalt, and they had a legal system in place. So you have these ancient people that just have this advancement in understanding and knowledge. And
you mentioned they had a legal system. They had a whole hierarchy for society.
Yes.
A template that's still used today. And please believe that the Anunnaki are still on our planet today.
Oh, yes, they are.
Those in positions of power. Let me explain something to you. You mentioned the planet Niburu. You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of, in the Bible, it speaks of New Jerusalem.
Right.
New Jerusalem, and a lot of people think of that being a city. It sounds like a spaceship. The planet Niburu from ancient Sumerian writings may be the same as the heavenly New Jerusalem described in the Bible's book of Revelation. Here are some similarities. In the Bible, the heavenly New Jerusalem is said to be about 1,500 by 1,500 miles in size and adorned as a bride for her husband. That would indicate that it has some visual splendor, as the streets are said to be paved in gold. It is said to be a dwelling place of God and his angels. In the ancient Sumerian tales of the Anunnaki, they are said to have come from Niburu. According to our studies, the Anunnaki may have used humans to mine for gold because they needed it for the atmosphere of their planet or a possible vessel. Could this be the heavenly New Jerusalem that is written about in Revelation? Will we possibly one day see the vessel in all its glory return to the planet? We can only wonder and speculate. But is it possible that the Anunnaki still walk among us in the form of presidents, world leaders, and other people of power? The city with all of its precious stones, gold, and shimmering beauty will be lighted with the glory of God. Its breathtaking majesty and purity is compared to a bride beautifully dressed to her husband.
Wow.
So think about that now.
Wow.
You think about a planet Niburu, right? So I picture God coming back. Last episode, we talked about Revelation.
Right.
When I picture God coming back, I just picture us being here now, us seeing a big, massive shadow just take over everything, right?
Right.
So I didn't want to throw us too far off course, but I thought that was real profound.
And I just want everybody out there to know, we definitely want you guys' feedback. We definitely want you guys to participate into this conversation, because when we were sitting down and we were talking about the Anunnaki, and I think it's interesting because a lot of times, our oversight on things, and we think, hey, this just happened. And, during the research, I stumbled across the guy who first came about some of this understanding, and his name was Nathaniel Smith. And he was a theologian at Colgate University. He was a Baptist preacher.
Very well respected.
Very well respected, world renowned for his interpretation of biblical scriptures and things like this. So when he came into the Qumeric text and began to decipher a lot of this stuff, when he began to decipher it, it was mind-boggling for him. He wrote a paper in 1890 that shook the foundation of Christianity and Judaism to the core. And he would be tried for heresy and also be fired from Colgate University. And in this paper, what he laid out, he had begun to understand that the Sumerian, the Assyrian, and the Babylonians all talked about Noah's Ark, the flood. They talked about Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, the followers, the fall. And these stories predated the Bible by 6,000 years or more in each one of these great civilizations. But it shouldn't have shook them to the core when you understand the root of Abraham and Sarah, where they came from. It says that Abraham and Sarah lived in Chaldeen, which is a city in ancient Samaria. So you have to understand that they heard these stories as children, and wouldn't it, be common that they would carry these stories with them when they migrated out of that land and into, the land in which they ended up at, and these stories would end up being in the Bible. But I think the ironic thing about it is that those three civilizations that I mentioned, those stories weren't talking about God. They were talking about the Anunnaki. All three of those, the Assyrians, Sumerians, and Babylonians, were talking about the Anunnaki. And they spoke about them in the epics of Gilgamesh. And they said that they were the bringers of knowledge. And I think that at that time when he discovered this, it was earth shattering. I mean, it was something that was so new, so different, that it shook everything to the foundation and the core and the beliefs of so many people, because these stories predated. And it weren't just those three civilizations. There's civilizations that spoke about the flood thousands and thousands of years in India and Native America before the Bible was wrote. But I think there was a watershed moment when Nathaniel Smith wrote this paper. And it's so crazy that after he was fired, he still ended up landing on his feet, because he was hired at Cornell University. And for 30 years, he studied cuneiform texts, and he began to decipher. And he worked almost the rest of his life tirelessly trying to decipher these tablets. And when he came and started to begin to understand these tablets, it broke down a culture of a people that was so sophisticated and so advanced and ahead of its time, that they understood where the planetary bodies lay. They understood where the planets were in the solar system. Now, it's so crazy, and I told you this earlier still, and it was profound the other night when we spoke about this topic. I've been living for 44 years, and I've never been able to stand in Compton, Inglewood, anywhere, and see Mars or Saturn or Jupiter.
No, but they managed to.
But they did. Without precise instruments, without precise tools, they knew where these planetary bodies were in their linear, or how they was organized and all of this. And this is thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago.
They were very highly advanced. They were very highly advanced, and they knew the whole structure of the universe.
Yeah.
They understood that.
Yeah.
They understood that probably because they was floating around in a massive city.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you have to understand this. When the Anunnaki came here, scientists are still baffled how man had this great leap in understanding, how they were able to build their temples in 7 layers and 7 structures.
Things that they can't duplicate to this day.
Exactly. And they had, at that time, these people, they said that this knowledge was imparted to them by the Anunnaki. They were not talking about God, which is contrast to what the biblical text says, that it came from God. They weren't talking about God. They were talking about gods. Elohim, which we know of in the Bible, is plural. The Anunnaki said Elohim was the powerful ones, the shining ones. Wow, it's just mind-blowing.
Well, you know what I do? I want to check in right now with some sponsors real quick. But when we come back, I want to get into the Garden of Eden.
Right.
And they're like pretty much the creation of the Garden of Eden. We'll be right back. All right. Now, we talked about it last time. We said we were going to talk about the Garden of Eden, right?
Right.
One of the things, we all know the story of the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve and the serpent, right?
Right.
You know, the serpent is a symbol of divine wisdom and knowledge in gods and heroes. In the tablets, as it turns out, the serpent was Enki's emblem. That was Enki. Enki was the chief scientist.
The chief scientist.
Of all those people. You know, pretty
Right.
much you could say he was the creator of the human race. Took
Right.
part of Adam's rib, which was Adamu.
Adamu, which is so crazy that still say this because in the biblical text, it calls him Adam. Now remember, still just said Adamu. Again, that Sumerian story predated the Bible by thousands of years about Adamu. Go ahead.
Right, what? Sumerian text claims that in the beginning, human-like gods ruled over the earth. When they came to the earth, there was much work to be done, and these gods toiled the soil, digging to make it habitable and mined against the hard work. When the gods, like men, bore the work and suffered the toll of the gods was great, the work was heavy, the distress was much. Anu, the god of gods, agreed that their labor was too great. His son Enki, or Ea, proposed to create man to bear the labor, and so, with the help of his half-sister Ninki, he did. A god was put to death, and his body and blood was mixed with clay. From that material, the first human being was created, in likeness to the gods, which sounds similar to the biblical story of our origins. Yet Sumerian text predates the biblical recount by thousands of years. This first man was created in Eden, a Sumerian word which means flat terrain. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Eden is mentioned as the Garden of the Gods and is located somewhere in Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Initially, human beings were unable to reproduce on their own, but were later modified with the help of Enki and Ninki. Thus, Adapa was created as a fully functional and independent human being. Adapa is Adam. This modification was done without the approval of Enki's brother Enlil, and a conflict between the gods began. Enlil became the adversary of man, and the Sumerian tablet mentions that men served gods and went through much hardship and suffering. The Bible's Elohim, who said, "Let us fashion the Adam in our image and after our likeness," were the gods of summer in Babylon, the Anunnaki who had come to earth from their planet Niburu. The Adam, he wrote, was genetically engineered by adding Anunnaki genes to those of an existing hominid some 300,000 years ago. Then, according to the Bible, intermarriage took place. There were giants upon the earth who took Adam's female offspring as wives, giving birth to heroes of renown. With meticulous detail, these were the demigods of Sumerian and Babylonian lore, such as the famed Mesopotamian king Gilgamesh. Are we possible descendants of the Anunnaki? Was the Garden of Eden a laboratory where Enki, the Anunnaki's chief scientist, spliced the human genome with Anunnaki DNA? We may never fully know, but according to ancient texts, this is all very real. See, this just rocks everything to the core because I always thought that the snake was Satan.
Right. And it's so crazy. Now think about this. And I want you guys, definitely chime in. Please hit the comments. I want you guys definitely to chime in. Think about this. They were in the Garden of Eden. And she seen that the tree of life bare these fruit, and they were beautiful. And the serpent said, go ahead and eat of them.
Which is Enki,
who
was going against the commands of his brothers.
It's his brothers. So think about this now. Now, that's crazy that you say that. Now, she said, no, for the Lord said that we shall surely die. And the serpent said to her,